Okay. Well, all right. Good evening, everyone.
John.
This is Mary Kay DeCourcy. I'm chair of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. This is an open meeting of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees. It's being conducted virtually in order to allow members of the community to join remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, which suspends the requirement of the meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location due to the COVID-19 virus. The agenda that includes the link, the telephone number, and the access codes for this meeting was posted on the Auburn Town website on Monday, January 31st, 2022. Permit me to confirm that the members of this body and persons anticipated on the agenda are present. Matt Toth.
Present.
Suzette Dowd.
Present.
Jennifer Shea.
Present.
Erica informed me that she would not be able to make it today, so I'm just going to mark that down. I am present, obviously the chair of the Board of Trustees, and John Danilowitz.
Present, thanks.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
We pronounce it Danilowitz.
Danilowitz. Okay.
Welcome, John.
Thanks.
Welcome.
We're really excited to have you. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. I do everything phonetically. After years of announcing graduation names, you use phonetic spellings. It's really helpful. So town employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jean Collins, Library Director. Present. Excellent. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Auburn Cablevision. May I have so we'll begin with the first item on the agenda. I sent everyone the meeting notes from November 3rd and January 18th. Have you had the opportunity to review those?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
Suzette. Suzette, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, I'm just going to go through roll call really quickly for the minute approval. Matt Toth and Suzette Dowd have voted. Jennifer Shea?
Yes.
Erica's absent. John, let me see if I can say this. Danilowitz.
Close enough.
Did I say close? Yeah, I promise I'll practice.
Yeah.
Approve of the minutes, John? Great.
So I would approve the minutes. However, I wasn't present at either of the meetings, so I'm not sure if I should or not. But assuming that's okay for me to approve them, I do.
That would be lovely. Thank you so much, John. So we are going to the first item. We've assembled the approval of minutes. The third thing, the director's report. Jean, do you have the director's report to present?
I do.
Great.
As I mentioned in my email, I'll sort of go through, because we didn't have the last meeting, I'll go through some things quickly on there so I can combine both of them for tonight. Some of the information isn't as relevant.
Okay.
Just some updates on the facility, which I did. You'll read all this in my annual report as well. The outdoor lighting in the back, which is, I appreciate Suzette bringing that to my attention, that it was kind of dark for the friends out there. So this was on the list to do, but I sort of, pushed it up a little bit to get that done. So that's been done. We had the windows professionally washed, which was a long time coming. I finally found somebody. He did a wonderful job. So now we'll have sort of a maintenance plan for that, so they don't, because in the afternoon they look pretty dirty. There were some other things here, remote storage and some ceiling updates. That's all will be in the annual report, so you'll be able to read about that. I did want to point out, because Nan is still taking good care of us out front. She actually called me from Woods one Saturday morning and said, "Do you want me to bring some birch?" I said, "Yes." So she did. She came and put those nice displays out front. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows.
I think she's listening. She was on early. Thank you, Nan, very.
Oh, thank you, Nan.
Awesome.
Friends work, I know Suzette will do an update there on the donations. You know, it's all suspended now because of COVID. They can't come into the building, but it was certainly a lot of people have been working very hard sorting and donating the books. I wanted to point out for the efforts from Matt Toth to make sure all the paperwork for the Friends 501c3 was up to date and compliant with all the requirements.
Great.
And there's a picture here with Suzette and Rose Laird. We just sort of took their picture when we were still setting up in the foyer. Grants, the state aid award, the amount for this year was $31,928.56. That's the highest award we can receive. We were completely in compliance with everything. And so hopefully, you know, we'll certainly put that to good use. Some of that will go toward the Sunroom project and the expanding the children's room as well. Cultural Council grant applications, I did submit 7 grants. I've not heard from that as of this date. I'm not sure what the status is of those, so we'll wait to see.
The Friends also, can I interrupt for 1 minute? The Friends of the Auburn Public Art Library also wrote 2 grants. We've heard one that we did not get, and that was a speaker who was going to talk about Green Hill Park, about Andrew Green's life, and that was not approved. And our second one is from Preservation Worcester, and we have not heard about that yet.
Yeah, I actually have to backtrack.
Myself with the grants.
I did have, I had to resubmit one of the grants for the ukulele program because we couldn't hold it, so I had to resubmit that, and that was approved, so we'll be able to hopefully hold that in the spring. And I believe there was one, I've just been I don't recall, but I think there was one that they denied, but I still haven't heard about the other one. So I'm sure they'll get to it as they can. It's just the beginning of the year still. The bulletin board policy, I guess we'll push this off to March. I will write a draft so the board can take a look at it. I think we do need one. We've been sort of, you know, I don't think it's going to be totally different from what we're doing now, but it would be good to have that as a policy. I've carved out some space, as you all know, for the Friends and foyer, and there's not that much room there. So we got to make the most efficient use of everything. So I will write up a draft and put that onto the March agenda. The hours of operation, this is important. We had said that we would slowly sort of start to reopen certain hours. So we have been open Thursday night from 7 to 8. We have had 0 people come in or call. So we'll continue to assess that.
Now, was that before it closed? Because you wouldn't need it during close time.
Well, I didn't want to go back on what the plan was, and you know, we might only be closed for a few more weeks, so you know, it gets confusing for the patrons to open and then close. So we just decided to keep it open. So yeah, it was as of a couple weeks ago. At the time that we made the plan, we didn't know we were going to be closed. So,
right.
Yeah. So
I just wanted to make sure that when you open again, it's going to, you know, I think you don't have to stay there till 8 o'clock now because, you know.
Well, I agree, but I didn't want to like stop and start. You know, we already changed the hours on like multiple places, and so we thought, you know, we'll do it. Then we can assess whether people came in when the building was closed, because they really just pick up holes versus they'll come in later. So we'll just thank you for your suggestions on that, but there's a lot of you know, there's a lot of changes we have to make every time we change the hours, and I didn't want to go back to it again. So if it looked like we would be closed again for, you know, a month or 2, then obviously we would do that, but hopefully that's not going to be the case. Okay, so let me just get my train of thought back here. Sorry, mask mandates, just to, you know, again, this is when we were open. 99% of our patrons do adhere to the mask mandate. We have free masks outside, inside, in the children's room, on the circ desk counter. So many of them take advantage of them. We have 2 sizes for adults and for children. Those are paid for from the CARES Act. And so that really helps because people got out of the habit and they come in and they go, oh my gosh, my mask, and they'll take a mask and put it on. So the programs have been suspended. There's a little bit of information about some recent programs that we've had here. And I believe
Can I go back for 1 minute? In
Sure.
Staff positions, towards the end of January, you posted FT Library Associate, an entry-level position. Have you had any feedback on that?
I have not posted that just yet. I've been, because I was away for 2 weeks, I'm still catching up. I also had to talk about some of this with Julie and Ed, because some of it's, aligned with budgeting. But I do expect to probably post that next week.
Thank you.
And so that was January report. So now I'll quickly go over the report for this month. So again, as of January 3rd, I believe it was the 3rd, we were again closed to the public. I did order some higher quality masks for the staff because before we were closed again, we still see 700 people coming into the library each week. And with the high transmission rate of Omicron, I followed the CDC recommendations, and we did get some higher quality masks. It's supposed to be, a little bit better. And we do wear them, for 8 hours a day. So we will continue to order those for staff. I don't think they should have to purchase them for them on their own. Reduced hours of operation. So the MBLC at their meeting, as you know, they're always very in tune with supporting libraries and making sure that everybody's safe and, that we're sort of aligning our resources and staffing and hours open in a way that makes sense. So they have reduced the hours. Actually, there is no hours requirement until April, and they're saying that might even be extended after that. So our requirement is 50 hours a week. We're currently open 51. I know a lot of libraries who have cut back to 40, 42. We're not doing that. Excuse me, again, we're completely in compliant with those, but the MBLC does watch those. They do surveys. They, they have roundtable meetings, and they really look to see what libraries need and how they can support those. For those of you who don't know, hours requirement is tied in with state aid, so you have to be in compliance. So that's good. I'd also mention that the hours requirement is not in place in the summer. So technically it's going to be April, May, and June. July and August, there is no requirement. And so if you really look big picture, probably it's going to be September before they're really, paying attention to that, assuming there's no other, issues with COVID. We do not reduce our hours in the summer. Vast majority of libraries do. We do not. We're open Saturdays and we're open evenings, and we're not required to do that. Thursday hours. Okay, so state that. There is another, sorry, because I've been away, I'm still catching up. There was a directed donation from Dr. Martha Pappas to the library that was received by the president of the Friends, Linda Dadas. And the funds are in the amount of $50,000. So it's targeted specifically to items for furnishings and equipment for the summer edition. And some parts of it to support the expansion of the children's room. I would also mention the expansion of the children's room was one of the strongest recommendations on the strategic plan. So I'm happy to say we're kind of finding the way to cobble together funds, and we're very fortunate to again have, the generosity of Dr. Pappas. And so that'll help sort of contribute to that goal in the strategic plan.
Excuse me, Mary? Mary?
Sorry, my.
Your mic's off, Mary. There. I can't hear you. Tell me when you can hear me, Mary.
Hear you.
Okay,
There it
good.
is. Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry about that.
I would like to just make a comment on the paragraph that was written by the director. It makes it sound like that wonderful gift was just a checkbook conduit to go directly to the library without any recommendations from the Board of Trustees, without any input from the Board of Trustees. And I would like to at least go back to the charter of the Friends, so that the point of the Friends is to have a community input into what's going on. Obviously, I understand what should happen with that money, but that ought to have some conversation with the friends. They kind of have conversations with people in the community to help make some recommendations. And the way this was written, it looks like that would not be a part of what was going on, but I can't imagine that the friends would want to just be a conduit. Now,
I'll be
I'd
able
love to help pick out the furniture, help pick out the, things that we're gonna add to.
But we're a long way from that, and I certainly think that there should be community involvement and other things like that. These were, it was a targeted donation, which means that she already knew where she wanted the funds to go to. Really, I can speak to this next week, or I can talk to Julie about it. I'm just passing along the information at this point. It was targeted, which means there are specific areas that it could go to or not go to. These are required. You can't move forward without, building a wall.
I understand that. I was talking about that it doesn't look like there's any conversation with the friends.
Right.
The friends need to approve money that's in their account. And it's supposed to be with the library director, but there should be other community, and this looked like everything was all done, and there's no in any area.
I will reach out to Julie, and she can clarify this process and reporting it.
Sure she can. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, the Friends has been working very hard, and we would like some input, picking out the furniture and saying what things are added to the children's room. Jean would give us recommendations, but we may have some good ideas.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. Like I said, we're a long way away from it. We're still, we've got to get the foundation in there. But if we are up for, discussion, have to
Do
have.
we have any timeline at all on this?
I'm sorry?
Do we have any timeline at all for the,
I don't. There's so many moving parts to this, and I certainly don't have the final decision. I would say that we've had to go back many times. It hasn't even gone out to bid yet, so there's still a long way to go. There are lots of things to consider. There's a lot of moving parts. I just got some more prices because prices are through the roof. So is supply chain management. So you might have a timeline, but that's probably going to blow up in some way. So I really can't say any of that is for certain. These are, don't forget that the bridge project and Goddard Park. I mean, that's all part of it too. It's not just the library. So I'm not at the grant.
I have a question. The Friends, one of our discussions was saying we might like to ask for donations for the Zen garden in the back from, local.
When I had spoken about that in the foyer, Suzette, and I think that's something to consider. As I had mentioned, it might be part of another grant, so we have to be careful we're not competing against other funding. And I don't have a timeline for that. That would, I think DPW would be involved. It's certainly not everything that flows through the library. There's a lot more to it than that. But I appreciate that. I think maybe there's options for that. Depending on where that funding is coming from, it could include maintenance, it could include materials. I don't know. Like I said, lots of moving parts to all of this. But yeah, I think it would be the Zen garden. So.
Any other questions? Sorry.
I'm not finished.
Yep, please.
So just a new book format. I just wanted this is brand new. No other library has it. We don't have them. We haven't received them yet. But it's a immersive reality book. So you get the books, and inside the book is a QR code, and it comes with purple glasses. So these are STEM-based and nonfiction. So I think it's a really fun way to introduce children to, to nature and to science and so forth. So we're looking forward to getting that. We're in the early stages of the Museum Pass program, re-energizing this, which is going to be a tremendous amount of work. Obviously well worth it. Our patrons saved more than $30,000 in entry fees. But museums are still open with restrictions, and there's still a lot of things that I'm trying to gear up so we can hopefully have them ready by April or May so that we can, get that program going again. Some other programs.
Can I say something about the museum passes? If the museums are open, even though the library's closed, shouldn't we be able to utilize the museum passes?
We could, but I didn't renew most of them because people can't yet get the full experience and they're expensive. And sometimes they wouldn't even take library passes. And there were 47 of them and every single one of them is different. So I've got to wait until everybody's kind of on the same page and they're able to open, with fewer restrictions and people can align a pass with an appointment at the museum. It was pretty complicated. So we just opted not to. Most libraries didn't renew them either. We plan to, most if not all of them. But we've got to reach out to every single one of those. We've got to do the budgeting. Most of the costs have increased. So, and sometimes there's a choice. You can have, just a weekend pass. I mean, it's pretty complicated program. So we're kind of waiting until everybody's kind of on the same page and they feel secure in opening and people can have the full experience. Because a lot of times parts of the museums were closed. So it really wasn't worth paying for the passes. And we had a few people asking because people didn't want to go any place with their crowds. So.
Right. I did go to the Ecotarium for New Year's Eve day with my granddaughter, and she brought a friend, and it was great, but you had to pay because.
Right. Well, at the time they were on weekends. So to pay for a pass that's only available on weekends, I have to weigh a lot of considerations, certainly budget-wise too, because it's expensive. So, but good to hear.
That was for a weekend. It was a holiday.
A holiday. Might have opened for a holiday. Yeah, like I said, they change almost by the week. We were trying to keep up with them, and we just couldn't because they're all changing.
All right. Well, we're anxiously awaiting for them to.
Good to know.
Walk again.
Other programs, ice harvesting. So we've really tried this 3 times. I'm very anxious to have this program. Kent Ethier will come. He's actually called me the other day and he said, well, the good news, I have a 200 pound of ice because it's been cold enough. So we had to reschedule this again till March. So hopefully, that would be very good program. The Iditarod dogs, this is coming up fairly soon. I'm really hoping for good weather so we can have it outside. We'll see how that goes. Sweethearts at Sea, I did reschedule with her as well. For March 3rd. She was not interested in doing a virtual program, and I think that's fine. I think when people are ready, they're going to want to come out to a program again. I did submit the first draft of my annual report to the town manager, and I will give you a copy either in a couple weeks or at the next meeting. And
I thought they would do on February 1st.
I think it was the 2nd. I'm not sure. I don't know. I lost track.
I was concerned that we weren't going to get it done in time. I said, our meeting isn't until the 2nd. How can we pass it in by the 1st?
Before I do the bill schedule, I wanted to read this response to the letter regarding the select board naming the sunroom edition. So I'm just going to read this. So I'll be looking down because I want to make sure I get all my points in here. So as you know, I was away for 2 weeks in the beginning of January. So I was out of the country and I had little to zero access to email, which in itself was kind of a blessing that happens. But so obviously when you come back from 2 weeks away, there's a lot to catch up on. So upon my return, when I began catching up on communications, which sometimes those were out of order depending on how the email strings were arranged. So, it took me a little while to get through everything. I was genuinely dismayed to recognize the valid point that the board should have been notified of the proposal to the select board for naming the sunroom in honor of the donors, Dr. Martha and Dr. Arthur Pappas. Julie addressed this concern with a letter of apology to the board while I was away. I'm now taking this opportunity to also accept responsibility and apologize for this unintentional mistake, as I'm equally responsible. I also should have noticed it, and I'm pleased that the select board made a mention of it. It was a regrettable mistake, and it was disrespectful to the board. So again, I apologize to the board. However, that's all it was. It was a mistake. It was most certainly not on purpose. It was accidental. I say that's all it was, not to insinuate that it was insignificant, but to call attention to the fact that it was not more than that. There was absolutely no collusion between the town manager and myself, nor was there any intent whatsoever to leave the board out of the loop. None. You might be surprised to hear it's hard for Julie and I to touch base even 10 minutes a week. So believe me, this, we don't have any time to do any much of anything other than that. I would like to point out, certainly for our newest board members and to the public who might be viewing this meeting, that over the past 6.5 years that I've been director, I have provided the board with close to 100 directors' reports, as well as ARIS reports, financial reports, state aid reports, informational emails, and documents from the NBLC. I have forwarded town manager communications to the town, to the BOT, and from other organizations relevant to the board. The town manager has also provided numerous information documents to the board on a number of occasions. I have also provided grant information, monthly newsletters, annual reports, literally hundreds of bill schedules, information on options for the board to weigh in on capital budgets, building updates, collection development, and other initiatives. A significant amount of information relating to library programs, weather closures, information about the ongoing COVID challenges and town updates, and many other issues relevant to the authority perimeters of the board as identified under the charter. In fact, the previous chair, Mr. Toth, mentioned many times during previous meetings that the documents, particularly the director's reports, were historical documents, meaning that they provided significant relevant information on a consistent basis to the board. In addition, please remember that the town manager and the CFO not only provided the very informative slides and other information about the Library Guarded Park pedestrian bridge project, online or in print if you desired, they both attended a board meeting to review those slides with the board and to answer any questions you might have had. As you can see, we believe in and practice transparency whenever it is relevant to the status of a project or stakeholder. At the time it should be made public, and we will continue to do so. So once again, I do sincerely apologize for the misstep, but that's what it was. It was a misstep. I would also add that this is easily remedied. I'm happy to revise the letter to include the vote of the board tonight on accepting the naming proposal, assuming that you are. In addition, you could write your own letter in support of the proposal. So there's an easy remedy to this. Everyone makes mistakes, and we owned up to it, and we should. I implore the board not to let this accidental misstep derail the good intentions of this wonderful gift. It would serve no one well to digress into negative discourse. It's best to acknowledge the mistake, which we have done, and accept the apology and move on. I appreciate that the board will make the right decision with regard to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I guess in response to just your last few sentences, I would say that the role of the board, both the appointed members and the elected officials, are to reach out to the community to find out what their interest is in terms of naming. So going back to, Suzette asked a question specific about a timeline related to a grant. Is there a timeline that you can give us in terms of the naming of the sunroom or any of these things so that we can gauge how we could reach out to the community and get some feedback from them about their pleasure?
Well, as I said, there are a lot of moving elements to this. I'm not privy to all the timelines. Timelines oftentimes are not set in stone. I cannot answer that question at this time. Okay. I am not involved in the discussions with Dr. Pappas. That's best left up to the people who are, in discussion with her. So I cannot answer that. This letter, what I just wrote, was to address the fact that we just forgot to keep you in the loop with the letter. So I'm not in the position to talk any further about any of the grant information.
And I appreciate that, but I guess, I'm sorry, let me just finish my point. Are you hearing my point that as an elected official, elected by the town residents of Auburn, I feel, I'm not sure about other board members, I want to hear from them. I think it's our responsibility to gain input about all things that matter to Auburn. So I guess I wouldn't want to put anything to a vote. I would want to reach out to the community and find out, some feedback from the community on their desires. So Matt, I'm going to call on you. Thank you for allowing me to share my opinion.
I wrote to everyone about my feelings about the value, importance, and joy in considering the naming of the addition of the library after Dr. Arthur M. and Dr. R. Pappas. as unarguable. It's hard to imagine a family in our community who would deserve this remembrance more than the Patton family. Their support, which extends to so many members of this community, create an environment for growth in every aspect of our lives. We can be thankful for their belief in our ability to use their gifts in a way to enhance the lives of every person in Auburn. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to go to the Board of Selectmen. Their respect for us was just something I was really very happy to see. After our meeting with them, I went, but for them to be able to consider the fact that we were not included in this process and that they recognized it before anyone else, I think is really a very positive point. And I will accept whatever anybody says, but I find it unimaginable that we could have been included in the process where our vote was to support that program, and also when the money was to be used, we were remembered. But when it came to this important one, we somehow or another were left out. But that's I'm not interested in a big match of any class here. I know what it is. We all know what it is. We've all experienced it. And this gift is just an overwhelming, positive event for the library. Thanks,
Yes.
Mary.
No, thank you. Chair recognizes Jennifer. Jennifer?
Thank you, Jean. I appreciate your note. I want to make two pieces. One, thanks, Jean. It's nice. We received that. I appreciate the update. I echo Matt's sentiments about the Board of Selectmen acknowledging that as well. Respectfully, Mary, if we wanted as a Board of Trustees to ask people about the sunroom naming, that should have been a conversation many meetings ago after we heard from this. So I don't think we need to delay to have a conversation if we want to ask Jean to revise her submission to the Board of Selectmen, or we opt to write our own and go along with the same name dedication piece. We can't survey the community on everything after something else happens that affects us. If we want to have a community input voice about this, we should have addressed it at that immediate time when it was there. And I think we need to stop, all of us, in any capacity, passing a buck back and forth. We have the chance now to either say we want to write our own letter from our piece, ask Jean to incorporate us into hers here, but those are the steps moving forward. We can't look at here and say, let's pause, let's ask the community, because as Matt just eloquently stated in the first two sentences of his piece, it's clear there's a lot of community support and appreciation for this family, and that, there's unpeace here, but we can't survey the community on everything just because we want to be included. We need to be more proactive if that's what we're going to do. And I just want to put that out there. Thank you again, Jean. I support Matt's statements as well. And hopefully as it's on our agenda later on, we can either move it up now and vote to figure out our next steps or go in that direction. But thank you for the note, Jean. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Jen.
And I just want, before I call on, I want to call on Suzette and then Matt. I will say this, I appreciate your comments, Jen. We have not surveyed the community on anything other than the strategic plan, which we completed 2 years ago. So I have a very strong commitment moving forward that we're going to have input from the community. And I just don't want to be pressured into making a decision. We have not had all the information very clear, and it was a surprise to me that the naming was already addressed before it was even discussed with us. So if it's not discussed with this small body, I think it would be a mistake not to reach out to the community and get feedback. I'm sure they'll affirm the choice, but they have a voice. And I guess I'm concerned that moving forward, we're elected and appointed to represent the community. I'm going to call on Suzette.
Can I just respond to your piece before Suzette?
Yes,
Mary?
yes.
I'm not saying we're not here to support the community, but we're trying to react to something versus going in that direction. We were presented with the plan, and if we at that point felt we should be thinking about a designation of a naming in this process, which if I interpreted Julie's response to us clearly, anyone in the town who lives here could submit whatever they wanted, and it could be Plowy Mick whatever ridiculous name of a piece and suggested a name. That's how I interpreted her response. I'm not saying we're not getting the community in here, but it was done, it happened, we have two choices. We don't need to now spend months and months and months say, do we want to have a community survey about one thing? We have other more important things to discuss and survey that we even have on our agenda to talk about. So please don't interpret that I'm saying we shouldn't be seeking it. It's in this regard, one particular thing. Why are we gonna backtrack and delay when we can make the choice to jump on or support our own piece or not move further in any direction?
Well said. And I respect you, but I respectfully disagree. So can I call on Suzette?
Hi.
Suzette, did you want to format?
What? I think we can accommodate both Mary and Jean by accepting Jean's apology and say, you know, it's water under the bridge. It was a mistake. She apologized. Accept her apology. Mary's input. You can have something in the library say, you know, let's name the sunroom. Suggestions, ask for suggestions to name this, we're adding a sunroom, let's have a naming vote. And after we get that information from the patrons, what they'd like it to be, now if they're informed, they know that the Papists donated $50,000 and then they donated for the pedestrian bridge, of course they'll vote for the Papists. I mean, there's no one in town that deserves it more. So I think that could accommodate both sides.
Thank you, Suzette. Yes, Matt?
Suzette, I think that's a good idea. There's probably no reason for every book that's checked out that a person couldn't be given a slip of paper telling them that we've got this room that is being supported through donations through the Pappas family, and we're considering naming options. Could they make a suggestion and they could make it right there?
Put it in the box, put it in the basket, whatever.
If I could just interject something here, and I don't know all the parameters. Grants often have many conditions and there's certain parameters. There are certain people who make certain decisions. I'm not saying what those are, what those not. I'm not at all the levels. I'm in a piece of it. So, you know, to make plans, you're kind of jumping ahead of things. I think there are ways to be involved at this point. You have to follow timelines. You have to follow conditions of the grants. You have to make sure the right people are in the right places and things aren't out of context or somebody's hearing one thing but not the whole thing. The town manager is very good about providing all of this information. And so, you know, it's turning into something it was just the letter that needed to be done. I was leaving quick, you know, in 2 days, so it was done quickly. All this is really just to apologize for not including the board with submitting that to the select board. I'm not naming a sunroom, nope, you know, it's just to see if you're on board with that. And as Jen pointed out as well, thank you, Jen, there's an easy fix. One or both of those is all we need to do right now. To go any further, it's very premature.
The Board of Selectmen.
And we don't have to do it now. We can do it later. We can do it when it is appropriate. But now we accept your apology and move on.
The Board of Selectmen make a decision about naming anything. What they've offered is for us to give our input. They're going to have public meetings on that for the public to give any input that they might have. What I would make a motion that the Board of Trustees meets with the Board of Selectmen as they requested and put forth our belief in naming it after the Pappases. That's all. It gives us a chance to do and respond to what they're doing. Then they have to go ahead and do their thing, which is to hold public meetings.
Right, so my understanding is there needs to be
like that is it doesn't give them a voice. If you have the naming, you know, suggestions to name the sunroom, then they have a voice too.
So you put it in a letter. So.
May I speak?
Go ahead, please, Jennifer, sorry.
I support Matt's motion if we're taking that, and I would happily second that we've asked to meet with the Board of Selectmen and put forth our support of the name of the taxes as Jean's note was there. But I do think the only piece that's really important here is that Mary or Jean or both of you, I don't know who's the best process here, is to ask Julie for a timeline so we can have a better understanding of the work, because it's a room.
Yeah.
This is not a hill we need to die on.
Exactly.
It's a room. And as Matt just said, this board of selectmen have to do all of their other piece to get all these things here. I'm sure all the little parks and the divots and the roads all are going to have fun names and plaques and like 100 different things. Let's let them do their job and let us know we had an issue, we're moving forward. We were all still in support of the name and go in that direction, but we need to know so we can feel comfortable too, or at least whatever is public and available to share with us about a timeline. So if anything else comes up and we want to continue to solicit feedback from the community or keep them aware of what's happening, we have a timeline. So I don't know, again, if it's Jean or you, Mary, or a joint letter, we can get some kind of rough semblance, like fall 2024, we're going to have a ribbon cutting. I don't know what the plans are, but something like that would at least give us some general idea of the plan. That might be helpful.
And I appreciate that when the information is publicly available, also, it'd probably be on the town website. But as you just said, whether things are publicly available, sometimes they need fine tuning. That's just not ready, still a work in progress. So you have to be careful not to get ahead of those things. I'll certainly speak with Julie. And I appreciate your comments on that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just think in terms of, moving forward, if in fact we are collaborating, I think that I would like to hear directly from you, Jean. I would like the board to be informed of any upcoming things and not have to resort to the website along with the rest of the community. That's why we're elected. So my hope is moving forward, it's February of 2022. It's been a tough 2 years. My hope is that moving forward, we'd be a very transparent board and we'd have enough time to be able to have commentary on these matters. So if, Matt, may I just reiterate what I think I heard you say, that you were making a motion for the Board of Trustees to meet with the Board of Selectmen to put forth our recommendation regarding our position on the naming of the sunroom.
Yes.
Is that correct? And do I understand, Jen, did you second that motion?
Yes, I did.
Excellent, thank you. Can I hear from the remainder of the board? Suzette Dowd, what is your vote?
Yes.
Okay. And Eric is absent. John, what is your vote?
Yeah, so I guess I start with a kind of a procedural issue. My understanding is where we are in the agenda is the director's report. And, I know that this was an agenda item, so I don't know if what we're proposing now is that we're kind of jumping around the agenda. I think as a best practice, I would suggest that we march through the agenda and kind of handle things, as they come, rather than taking an action at this point, if that makes sense.
Okay. Does the board support that?
We do have a motion, that's the trouble right now.
I wasn't finished with the director's report, so John makes a good point on that.
Okay.
It's digressed into something else, so.
Okay. I guess I was under the impression that you had finished, Jean. But if you would like to move forward and finish, absolutely. But I have no objection to, making a motion now and voting versus a little bit later in the meeting. But please continue, Jean.
Bill schedules, one of them is lengthy. That was from the January meeting that we didn't have. And then there's some additional bill schedules here. So as I usually do, to see if anybody has any questions about what anything represents. Anybody have any questions?
I don't.
Nothing on either one?
Nobody? Okay, very good. Continue.
That concludes my report, unless anybody has any questions about anything on the report.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is in the January 8th meeting that we didn't have it. The library website, it says Friends tab, multi-sub tabs. I tried going on to that and it said under construction. I didn't
Right,
see
I'm waiting for
anything.
the content from the friends. We have to put in tickets to have those pages created from our web platform. So it was my understanding you were gonna put your mission statement and, then things, people couldn't meet. So we have to have those pages there. So whenever you have the content ready, then you tell me and the page is ready and I can post it. But unless I put that there first, we can't, then there's a delay while I have the pages incorporated into it. So.
That's fine. Just wondering, I didn't know.
Yeah, I think, and if you have the mission statement, you can send that to me at any time. Now that we have that page there, it could be posted. But I didn't know if you're going to review it again. I don't post it. I'm at the
Mission
meeting.
statement, same way it is.
So.
It's already in the bylaws, all that information we gave to you.
Yeah, you have to send it to me separately though, because I take the directive from you. I don't want to, inadvertently post something that somebody hasn't voted on or you
Can I
made it
give
to
you a
me.
black line copy of it, or do I have to email it to you?
Be electronic, and I would suggest that you maybe run everything through the president, even though so that there's a chain of command there at the Friends.
We've already discussed it. I discussed it with the president. We've discussed it at our meeting. We went over the mission statement.
Yep, so all you have to do is send it to me as a formal, whatever the chain of command is, and you can copy whoever you need to be on there. And if it comes to me that way, then I'll have the copy right there of exactly what it is that you want, and won't be any miscommunication about it. And I'm happy to do it. So
You have a copy of the bylaws, an
I don't
e-copy?
think we have an electronic copy. I'm not sure.
I'm asking now.
Oh, sorry.
Do you have the e-copy of the bylaws for the Friends of the Auburn Public Library?
Yes.
Will you send that to Jean? Then she'll have all the information. I
Yes.
think.
So I
Thank
think
you.
We're not the friends.
Linda,
And she's asking for very specific information you want, not the bylaws, so that she's not copying a section that isn't what you want on the webpage. So I think
All right,
the
Matt,
friends
send it
need
to
to
me
talk
and I will
about
highlight everything that we want on it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what he needs,
Yeah.
but it needs to be from the friends group since we're not the friends group.
That's fine.
Very good. Any other discussion on that? So in order to, accommodate our newest member, I accepted all of the affirmative votes on that passed motion by Matt. I'll wait for Mr. Johns for the end of the meeting. But I'm going to move on in the sake of time. Suzette, can you give us an update on the Friends of Auburn Public Library, where we're at right now? Any new updates?
Yes. The Friends of the Auburn Public Library collected books for 2 weeks in December and 2 weeks in January, on Tuesdays from 11 to 1, Wednesdays 4 to 6, Saturdays 11 to 1. And at every day, there were 3 or 4 volunteers cleaning books and sorting books, stacking them on the shelves. And either Linda or myself was there for every session. And Linda and myself were the ones that were collecting the money that was given. Mostly we had great books donated. Some books were clean your cellar books, which are not what we weren't able to sell. And when the people donate those, then we have to dispose of them. So I want people to know that we only want books that we can sell. They could think to themselves, people just won't buy books that are musty or dirty. You say to yourself, would I buy this? If it's dirty and it's moldy and it's got all kinds of writing in it, you wouldn't buy it, so don't donate it. It's only books that can be sold. We really need more room to store the books. We're planning on outside book sales once a month, starting when the weather is conducive, probably April or May. The Friends of the Auburn volunteers are planning to meet in February. President Linda Daddis has been soliciting donations, tax-deductible donations in town. She's doing a fabulous job. Being a member of the Board of Trustees, I'm not able to solicit. tax deductible donations. I'm the book sale coordinator. We're working with a great group of people, and Friends are providing a great service to the town of Auburn. Literacy at a discount. It's been a pleasure to actually get the Friends of the Auburn Public Library up and making a difference. Library patrons were thrilled to have literacy at a discount. Hardcover books are $2, paperback books are $1, and children's books are 2 for $1. We're also planning a membership drive, maybe during library week. We haven't really got that going yet, but during our February meeting, we plan to write the pamphlet and write the membership form as a committee.
Great.
That's it.
That's a lot of work. Thank you so much, Suzette. Anybody have
It is
any
a lot of work
questions?
because
It's,
Linda or I,
Give a discount.
what? Literacy at a discount, right?
yeah, I agree. It's a lot of work. We appreciate your leadership, Suzette. And it's so exciting that after all, I learned about it for the last 2 years to see it up and running with the president. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and she's
Sorry.
perfect for the job.
Yes, she is. She
You
is.
know, when we were there collecting books, a lot of times she would go out and talk to the people who were donating books and say, do you have any interest in joining our group? Would you like to volunteer? And she had people sign up right then and there. And, yeah, I want to be a volunteer. We said, here's the schedule, sign up.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Thank you, Suzette. I
Great.
attest to the fact to how hard the Friends are working in the garage. I certainly support everything Suzette's saying and doing. I mean, they're doing a great job.
Great.
Great.
Thanks, Jean.
Thank you.
Great. Anything from anyone else regarding the
It's
Friends?
really helpful to us too. She got us a book. We needed something to deliver the books from the garage to the foyer without having to take all the books by hand around the driveway outside. She gave us a rolling cart that we could fill. So when the people come down after they clean the books, we sort them. What books do we want to go out now? We put them on the rolling cart. Then we can go through the workroom, through the library with an escort and deliver it. But we haven't been able to do that since the library closed. We can't wait till it starts again.
Yeah, I agree. Great. So we'll move on to the next item unless anyone has any further comments. So the next item on the agenda is the item B, BOT's letter to the town manager and her written response. At our November meeting, which was a live meeting, the board expressed dissatisfaction with getting a number of emails from the town manager regarding concerns is the language that the Board of Trustees is violating the open meeting law. The board requested that I wrote a letter to the town manager. I waited a few weeks because I just wanted to make sure that when I wrote, I focused exactly on the concern, which is just the repetitive letters and the insinuations that the board was violating the open meeting law more than once. I want to say I might have about 8 or 10, more than that, emails. I responded to please stop and that we just didn't appreciate it. I included my letter in our last meeting as an attachment, as well as the town manager's response. I guess my concern, I presented that information because I was asked to. I felt like her response was very, very strong. But more importantly, as I said, sorry about my dog. I waited a few weeks and I went to the Sturbridge Library where I study. I'm a PhD student. And I took time to really keep as I said in the letter, keep the thing about the thing, be very focused on the fact that we just don't appreciate it. We want to move forward. And I guess to my dismay, a few days later, when we had our meeting at the Board of Selectmen, it came out as part of the interview. So the chain of events made me very unhappy. I expressed that to the chair of the Board of Selectmen. So I just wanted to share this information with you, leave it up to the board to discuss it. I just have to let my dog out the back for just a second. But does anybody have any commentary, any questions? Matthew, please.
You know, I guess for me, I have talked about this before. The violation that triggered this chain of events, this almost paranoia about open meeting violations, started with a letter that I told Julie I was going to write that would include everything that the Board of Trustees had for concerns, and which really came out later with the Board of Selectmen. We wanted to restore the role of the trustees. I made a mistake by sending that to everybody. Not that I sent that to them, but that I asked for anyone to make a correction. Okay, that was it. Now, Julie knew that. If she wanted to make a complaint against me, she should have done it. Instead, she started an investigation through town council, and we all suffered through that. I wish I would have had legal counsel at the beginning of that instead of during it, and I would have never responded, which she took offense to, that I said I'd never respond. Well, of course, until there's a formal complaint, you'd have to be stupid to start responding.
Right.
So I want to, but I'm sorry that the rest of you have had to listen to this stuff over and over and over. I have never had a time when I had a quorum of the Board of Trustees that I ever had a conversation about anything. The most I have ever said is, wasn't that a ridiculous thing that she or he said? Or wasn't this a bad policy, or it's a lot of BS? I did say that. That is not an open violation, open meeting. And that's why I requested at that last meeting, if you've got something to say, and I guess you put it pretty well, you can't get a goat if there ain't no goat to get.
Right.
If you've got a complaint, don't suggest that it might be me, it might be Jen, it might be Mary, it could be Suzette, or it's probably Paula, or it may be Nan.
Right.
Be what you're thinking. And so I'm glad that you wrote this letter, and I hope that the next time that there's some kind of an issue, we're not stupid. We've all gone training. We've all listened to that stuff. I tried to get on it on the 13th, but that one got canceled because I had questions to ask of town council. Because I don't think any of us had made any violations. I am the only one that you can point to that should not have asked for people's feedback on that letter. Okay.
Well, it certainly did make everybody, including myself, paranoid. I mean, a teacher that I taught with came, and she was going to be interviewed, and I was afraid, and she left the meeting. My granddaughter got a COVID scare, so I didn't come to the meeting. I was afraid to ask anybody, what happened to this person? I didn't ask anybody because I said, I can't talk to anybody about anything.
Yeah.
That's not true.
So it's created a feeling of a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't. Anyway, we respond to the friends.
All right.
You know, I support that, Suzette, and I just want to make a clarification because I could be misconstrued. After the interview, which I understood that in good faith, that the Board of Trustees were meeting with the Board of Selectmen specifically to interview candidates to appoint to the Board of Trustees. What I didn't expect was to have questions directed to our candidate that had question about whether that candidate would, in good faith, abide by the open meeting law, and insinuating that our board didn't. And I will say this very, very directly. I had to really cool down because it was so inappropriate. It was being dressed down on television, which is absolutely, at the very least, poor form. But I had to take a big breath. I realized that I am the chair, So I stepped away from the meeting, and as a private citizen, I wrote a letter to the Board of Selectmen stating that while I've only been on the board for 2 years, members of this board who I hold in very high esteem have served this community for 35 years, 25 years, 10 years, and to be dressed down or to insinuate in a public forum that we lack integrity was absolutely unacceptable to me. And I would take an insult as someone who's a new volunteer, but on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I've learned so much from all of you, and I have observed your commitment to this community. As a private citizen, I could not stand by and accept that slap in the face. I also reached out to the state, on the state level, because I felt that it was a conflict of interest for what felt as though the town manager was sort of pitting people on the Board of Selectmen against the Board of Trustees. I was very uncomfortable with that professionally. So I reached out, I was interviewed, and this is again, as a private citizen, not as the chair, and I was informed that we were clearly dressed down, but it was more of an issue whether we wanted to pursue that we're being treated so dissimilarly than other boards and commissions in the town, whether I want to take the complaint to the Mass Commission Against Discrimination. So I thanked the person for taking his time. This was the day after Thanksgiving. I cooled off a little bit before I got on the phone, but I don't accept that. I don't accept being dressed down by someone that I voted for, last year. And I certainly don't accept being dressed down or having any member of this board treated with a lack of respect. So in my private letter that I sent to the chair of the Board of Selectmen, I requested that it would be in the best interest to move forward to have an apology given to the board, which we have not received. And again, I will drop that issue, but I at least wanted to bring it forward because I felt that the committed members of this board have done so much for the Auburn Public Library that speaking against us publicly is just not acceptable. So I just wanted to share that again, I want to make a distinction. The letter that I wrote to Julie was as the chair, but following the meeting, I just felt that I had to step out of my role as the chair and address my concerns about the poor form on the November 22nd meeting. So that I just want to make that clear. Any comments? I'm just gonna get my, oh, sorry. My dog is competing with members of the board. So does anyone have any comments that you wish to make about the letters that I wrote, about the joint meeting, open discussion, before we move on to the next item?
Wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot.
Yeah, Mary, Mary, if I could jump in for a sec?
Please do, John.
Sure. So as a newcomer to all of this, I found the training on open meetings law and the examples of open meetings law violations that the Attorney General's office has dealt with to be illuminating, particularly since several of them were counterintuitive and things that were considered a violation in my mind would never have risen to that level. So, it's clearly a complicated piece of legislation and it's important for us to understand it. Not having been kind of party to previous discussions, I really can't comment on those, but looking at going forward, I'm just wondering whether there's anything specific in the town manager's letter that we as a board need to address. For example, I think there was a request that we have meetings, further meetings to have discussions on this. So my suggestion would be that we look at the letter from the town manager and determine whether there are any action items for us. I mean, to me, the most important things are that we understand what the open meetings law is and that we all individually and collectively do our utmost to comply with it. Our obligations beyond that I defer to others who know this better than I do. So that's what I had to say. Over.
Well said. Thank you, John. Does anybody have any further comment about that? Because I can put it on the agenda for, I'm sorry, Jen, were you raising your hand?
Yes, and just to go answer John's question, I think the letter John stated,
Yeah.
we're encouraging continued education on the open meeting law. The town created a meeting, but it wasn't, as far as I was aware, some kind of vote of availability. It was one date and time. That doesn't necessarily work for everyone. I didn't get the impression that it was going to be recorded. Maybe I misinterpreted that piece, but I think that's really what the takeaway was. And I don't believe we as a board or as boards, like that was sent out from I think it was Deb and the town clerk. No, I'm screwing it up, but it was sent to all boards and committees.
Yeah.
Here's a meeting that's going to be for open meeting law. I don't believe there's been a follow up to additional, or here's a recording of this or that. And I think that is the true takeaway of a action item that would continue our efforts to learn and grow alongside all of the other discussions. I think that answers your question, and I'm hoping that the town is providing additional resources in the future, or we have that on a discussion point at a future meeting.
Great. And that communication came from Rachel Pressey. And I agree with you, Jen. I guess I'm reaching out to the board for the pleasure of the board. Would you like me to reach out to the town clerk about the availability of other meetings or a recording if there was in fact a meeting? What would the board like me to do as the chairperson? Go ahead, Matt.
That meeting was canceled. They are going to redo it sometime this spring. And my guess is going to that meeting will be sufficient for understanding the open meeting law. And then and there'll be an opportunity for questions after that meeting.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I will reach out to the town clerk to see if there's any time frame on that and whether or not we can have access if it's streamed, if we can have it recorded so that we would have the opportunity to watch it if we're not able to make it to the live Zoom call, or in the case that it's an in-person meeting. So
if I could
please do.
That's helpful. The other thing, another takeaway I had from the exchange of letters was that one of the challenges has been the virtual and hybrid format of the meetings and some of the technical difficulties that we've encountered. With that in mind, I also note that it was a recommendation from the town that boards hold meetings virtually during this period. But from my perspective, I think it would both help address some of the concerns about open meeting law and also make for a more fruitful discussion if we as a board decided to meet in person going forward. If there are precautions we need to take in terms of the spacing within the rooms and wearing a mask, we can certainly do that. But I think the virtual format of the meetings is suboptimal. Over.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead, Jen.
Just to echo that, we did make that effort, and then the town shut everything down again. So we are not currently at that stage, but we did. I think there was a fall meeting, and it was not the one that's been discussed because I wasn't at that meeting. But there were some fall meetings in the planning room before. So we have tried to come back from COVID being virtual. I do think that also just begs the state to actually get their act together on what that actually means.
Just on that though, as I read the communication from the town made the decision about closing the library, the senior center, and the town offices. They made a recommendation to boards that they weren't instructed. So my sense, and again, this might be something we can follow up on, my sense is that it's within our prerogative to determine that we as a board want to meet in person. We still have to provide access to the public, but I don't think that the town can direct the Board of Trustees how we conduct our meetings. Over.
Okay.
Good point.
Excellent point. Thank you, John. So again, to reiterate, I can reach out to the town clerk. Should I put it on the agenda for the March 2nd meeting as a discussion item? And I will, whatever information I get from the town clerk in terms of the training piece is what I'm referring to, I can send it right out to the board as real time as soon as I get it.
Good, thank you.
But I appreciate, John, I appreciate your input. I agree. It's really a recommendation. I think the issue, the only barrier, physical barrier, is if the town buildings are closed, we'd have to make other accommodations in terms of figuring out where to meet. Because if the library's closed
Yeah,
and the,
public space. So
Correct.
we don't have a public space available to us.
correct, that's fair, that's fair. Excellent.
Although on that, again, if we are considered town employees for the purposes of the open meeting law, and if the other town employees are allowed into town buildings for certain purposes, I don't see why an exception to the general kind of closure to the public couldn't be made to allow members of a board to have a meeting in a town space. Again, with the appropriate, precautions, et cetera. Over.
I appreciate you, John. I appreciate you, absolutely. So what I will do, again, I will bring this item up in terms of getting the facts for the board, but also bringing up, I'll actually reach out and determine if there is a space that we can utilize, because John, I think your point is very well made. Are we ready to move to the next item? Matt, I put on deliberation because I felt like that might be something that you want to talk about, or have we already discussed enough of the
We've discussed
open meeting law?
some of that, and you can easily go to the website for the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law and take a look at the deliberation statement, and it is really very clear. There has to be a quorum. There has to be an attempt to make some decisions outside of that meeting. And it requires a lot more than we've been accused of, or at least that I'm aware of. I can't imagine where the accusations come from. So I'd like to just look at that, wait for the training that comes, and ask, as you did for the town manager, that unless she has an honest to God, serious complaint coming from someone that's formal, please leave us alone.
Just leave us alone, exactly. I agree. Okay, I'm just looking for any other comments or hands. I don't see any. I think the recent, sorry, was that you, Suzette?
Yeah, I was just looking at the rest of the items and I think we've already covered those.
Yeah.
So you could jump down to G, the annual report feedback.
Well, can we haven't finished?
We haven't finished them, Suzette.
Oh yeah. Joint meeting, open discussion, Scott Wren's 2 questions.
Right,
I think we've kind of,
covered
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
We're
I
down
think
at,
where we're at is recent notification of the dedication of the new sunroom. We discussed that. Again, everyone voted. I am going to ask John for his vote in terms of a request to meet with the Board of Selectmen on that item.
Sure.
But the BOT surveys, I guess, when I came onto the board originally back in 2000, I think it was 18 or 19, something that I'm really interested in, just as a consumer, aside from my professional roles or my voluntary roles, is one example I brought up to the team is I have my medical, the medical program that I subscribe to, Partners. They constantly survey. After I go to an appointment, I'm barely in the driveway and I get a survey. Well, I've done some inquiring. They don't only survey patients, they survey the doctors, the custodial staff, they survey everything. And I have had enough foster care parenting experience to compare Partners with a number of other places that don't use that model. And there's quite a difference in terms of customer care, quality assurance, just right down the pike. So the item about the surveys is really coming from me, that I think we need to, whether it's at this meeting or future meetings, we need to discuss a way that we can get feedback from the community, whether it's a QR code survey that they can just literally get on their phone, whether it's, as Matt mentioned earlier, somebody, we could get surveys and put them in, just as it says the library hours when we check out a book. it would be very easy to ask people to take a minute to answer one question. And again, when I think survey, I think one
Do
topic.
that. At
Sorry?
the bottom of your receipt, at the bottom of your receipt, the grocery stores do that.
That's right,
Answer
that's
this,
right.
you know.
So that's something, you know, I brought up earlier in the year, and I'm very interested in inclusion. My background is in special education inclusion, but as I talked in earlier meetings about the efforts that the Joshua Hyde Library is making in terms of being explicit about communities being safe for all people of special populations, people with disabilities, people who are, you know, people of color, interracial marriage, you know, people who may be identify as LGBTQ, just creating an environment of safety. And I don't think that we can ensure that unless we get feedback directly from the community. So my interest would be moving forward that the board discusses a way in which we can get feedback from the community on issues that are important to the board, the strategic plan, as well as our diversity and inclusion and equity policy that we have accepted. So that's really a new thing. Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead.
Can we go back to actually getting John's vote, since we skipped over that completely, and
Okay.
then to the survey piece? Mary, I think we just needed to be an agenda item of actually discussing ideas, because we've talked
Right.
about talking
Yeah.
about surveys for a while now, and we just need to action it. If we want a survey, someone's got to create it. We need to either have a motion for a subcommittee and start drafting something. Otherwise, we're just going to keep talking about it. But I'd like to go back so we can actually get John's vote, because I think he was saying, sure, I'm ready to vote, not sure, I made a decision, and I wouldn't want to vote for him.
Fair enough, Jen. I agree with you. John, would you like to vote
Sure.
on motion for the board to request a meeting with the Board of Selectmen in order to discuss our recommendation or our position on the naming of the sunroom?
Sure. That,
No, thank you.
Chris Benjamin on the survey, I agree 100% that there's good work that can be done there. Also, I've been following the discussion about what the proper role of the Library Board of Trustees is, and I've been thinking about this a lot. One of the things that's clear to me is that rather than focus on the things that, you know, we can't do or we're told that we can't do, you know, there are some things clearly that we can do. And I think the reference earlier to the strategic plan was very important for me. To the extent that the Board of Trustees owns the strategic plan, or at least is the progenitor of it, I think in terms of monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of the strategic plan, that's a perfect way for us to get into this the survey issue. So I agree with Jennifer's suggestion that we have a more targeted, focused discussion on this, and whether it's a subcommittee that's formed or it's an agenda item in a meeting. I think coming up with a methodology and an approach to surveying, perhaps linked to the strategic plan, would be a positive way forward. Over.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you, John. The next item, G, is the Auburn Public Library 2021 annual report. I apologize that I sent you two versions. The first one, I omitted some really important information, specifically the role that Suzette Dowd played in terms of moving the Friends Committee forward. I also omitted the fact that we had two very important resignations or retirement to the board, but also that we had two new members. And then I had some specifics related to our desire to see the strategic plan move forward, the fact that we had to restore the role of the Auburn Board of Trustees subcommittee. We also had Suzette led a subcommittee on making sure that the Friends had all the support that they needed to begin the Friends program. And then as I said, I added some things that I left out in the first letter. Go ahead, Jen.
I just have two requests for change, since if I read Jean's and maybe Julie's too, I don't know if I'm confusing emails correctly. this is something signed by all of us, unless of course it is clearly designated of who is writing this. But I do think, to our start of our conversation, these are not hills I want to die on, at least. And therefore I would encourage two pieces of change. So paragraph 3, I would, just note that we've had inquiries and the pandemic has been a problem, and that we lessen and delete the rest of it. You could reorder the sentence that starts with the ALP Board of Trustees consistent inquiries, and just go that the pandemic has driven changes. I don't think we need to belittle and belabor things that we all know have existed in a public forum. Once again, we're there. And then in the following paragraph, I would also just change that mid-sentence to be a subcommittee was established to work on the position of the Board of Trustees that was overlooked in the charter change. Again, we're going into things that we all know have been discussed in numerous forums, and it quite frankly just doesn't sound in a positive way, especially with the ending sentences that you have there. And we all want to move forward in a positive direction, so let's clean up some of the pieces that are there. We all know they exist. We've all felt our own experiences with them. It's not going to change, and we don't need to continue to call it out because it just continues to bring negativity across the board. So those are my two suggestions. If I need to provide a more formal written sentence, I'm happy to do that, but I know we're not going back and forth with email, and I don't recall that's in the beginning if it was due yesterday or today. But those are my two. Otherwise, I think it's hitting on all the topics we've discussed, and we still get our point. We're just not hitting the head of the hammer and the nail too many times.
Okay, I appreciate your feedback. Matthew?
I feedback too.
Yep. Well, I'm listening, but to go back to a point that Jen made, that's a really good point. When I wrote the piece last year, I listed everyone, and I was corrected that I wasn't, that I'm representing the board in writing the letter, and that I can open it up to the suggestions and comments, but ultimately I'm the chair and I'm sending the annual report forward. So what I was looking for, and I appreciate, Jen, your comments, but what I'm looking for is any inaccuracies in this letter, any dates that I might have made a mistake in terms of those issues that, the meetings that I referenced. So I am listening, but I'm not necessarily going to edit, but I am going to take into consideration and redo it, relook at the letter and see if I need to make any changes.
Then,
Matt,
please keep in mind that please keep in mind, Mary, the impression, and as all of these other emails have come out, something from you is implied from all of us, and that is there needs to come in. We have to be mindful of this being for the Board of Trustees, and individual grievances are not what carries through in that piece. Because there are high perceptions that one says something and therefore it ripples to everyone, and that's what we've already just had a conversation about, that undue stress, people involved, all of those things, and no one wants any of that. So whether or not it's your name, all of our names, or whatnot, we should be mindful that this is from the Board of Trustees, and we should make sure we're all feeling confident in what goes forth. Sorry for that.
Well, I think I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Suzette, where you wrote Mrs. Linda Daddis, that's not accurate.
Oh, okay.
Mrs.
Okay.
The subcommittee was Nan Johnson, I think. It says Paula Milliken, but I think the subcommittee for the Friends of the Auburn Public Library was Nan Johnson, not Paula Milliken.
Yes.
Or maybe
Thank you.
both.
Yeah.
And there is a spelling error for recognize, I think.
Okay.
I think recognize is with a Z, not an S.
Yeah.
That's what
And thank you. I ran it through spell check numerous times, but okay. Thank you. So let me go back. Let me just make,
spelling it.
so I just wanted to be respectful with, can I say MS Linda Daddis or just Linda Daddis?
Ms.
Okay.
Ms.
I struggled with that too with John, because
The other people, you gave them a title.
yeah.
Except for me.
Sorry, I was trying to be consistent, and I did.
Yes, but
I
don't put
didn't-
Mrs.
Okay, got it. So can I just say that back, that I need to fact check, the subcommittee members on your subcommittee. So I'll go back to those subcommittee notes, and you think it was Nan Johnson. I know Paula Melican, because I was in a meeting where she was present, and I think I was the note taker. Recognize I need to do a spell check, and Ms. Linda Dattis, did I spell her name correctly? Dattis? Okay.
Yeah,
Did I make any mistakes on any dates that you picked up?
I didn't pick up on any.
Okay,
Those were
because
the
the
errors
first
I
meet,
found.
okay, go ahead, Matt.
I understand what you're saying, Jennifer, but I think there's something historical about this annual report.
Yeah,
And it's important maybe for the future board members to understand what has gone on in the past. And without filling in some of the details of this, I think that gets lost. This has been a real struggle on the Board of Trustees. John's alluding to what it is we do or don't do and what we can or can't do, and try to focus on those positive things. I don't disagree with that at all. But I think people to understand that it's been a real struggle. And that right now, there's very little input. And that those are things that we've focused on. That's why I don't have any criticism of this. I have a couple little corrections, but nothing of any substance, really.
I absolutely hear you, Matt, and I agree. I do think maybe it's the timing of this and not having meetings around being able to craft something or exactly the role where it comes from. And then the question, because I read it and the tone just comes out. Whether or not that's the intention, I wonder if there's a better way to phrase some of those things to still incorporate them, but not have it seems like some of them were put in there just for having that really impactful piece. And I don't know if it's the way I've written it, if it's because I've experienced it, because I've been here too. I don't know what that cav is. I'm just trying to find a tone that's a little bit more neutral, but still highlighting that. So I understand where it's coming from, but those would be my suggestions if that is in fact what I was being asked for. I'm throwing it out there. It's neither here nor there in the long run. Again, it's not a hill I want to die on.
right.
I
I
like
appreciate you, Jen. I appreciate you. Go ahead, Jean.
So Jen, I appreciate you mentioning that paragraph. This is the board's report, it's not my report. I wrote my own report. It's very positive in tone throughout because that's what these should be. So I'm only mentioning this part because it does mention the library director. And this sentence is very misleading. This is not accurate. It reads, the APL Board of Trustees has advocated
What
for the
paragraph?
Which paragraph, Jean?
the one that Jen was referring to, I'm sorry, the third paragraph, the bottom of the third paragraph.
Okay.
The APL Board of Trustees has advocated for the Auburn Public Library staff to conduct surveys. I'm not sure where that came from. In order to
For years.
satisfaction with programming, library hours, library resources, materials, and collections. The library director has communicated that her preference is for patrons to reach out to her directly with questions and concerns. So that's pretty misleading because I believe that's referencing issues that came up that were related to privacy concerns for patrons, which should not be brought to any board meetings and which should go to the library director or town manager if it's something like that. So it's kind of lumped a whole lot of things in there in one place, and it doesn't reflect. It's not a good reflection of what my role is. I've certainly advocated to the board many times in terms of having input into collection developments and so forth, and nobody's ever, except Nan at one point, has been interested in talking about that. So I feel like it's a lot of things just kind of lumped in that sentence, and it's not, it's misleading and it's not accurate. And so that would be my request, is to remove that.
Okay, thank you. I will say, to be very specific, concrete, and quantitative, I had asked many times about surveying myself. I know that I did at many meetings about getting feedback regarding the quality, quality control. And directly, Jean, your response to me was, if anybody has any concerns or questions, they need to come to me directly. Last year, I requested email addresses for the whole board, and it wasn't very popular. But my goal was not in any way to be contentious, but rather to be able to have people, if they have concerns or things that they want the board to bring forth, that we would have that opportunity to do that. The town manager reached right out to me, offered me, you know, a number of ways that we could use email, but the board wasn't interested in that time. So to be very specific with you, Jean, on numerous occasions you've stated that that was something that you would either A, talk to the town manager about because it's between the two of you, or B, that if anybody has any issues, they can speak to you directly. So I guess that's a point that's very specific for me because I've experienced it directly over the past 2.5 years. So, but I hear your feedback and I appreciate it. Does anybody else?
I'm sorry, I would like to rebut that.
Please do.
Without getting real specific, because we don't want this to turn into anything. On the occasions that you accuse library staff, those aren't things that are discussed in board meetings, and those aren't things that would be included.
Jean, you're going in a totally different, no. I'm not going to accept, I'm not going to give you the floor because I was specifically speaking about surveys. I was very articulate about that, and you're bringing it, so no, I'm not going to recognize you, Jean. Right now, I'm going to stop that because that's going back to 2020. That's 2 years ago. So I'm not interested in entertaining that at this meeting.
COVID lockdowns.
I'm not interested in that.
There will be surveys. Those come from the town manager and myself when we develop the goals. The
Right.
IT, I don't recall being asked for email addresses. That would be the IT director, and that would come from the town manager, not from me. I can't give him a directive to get emails.
I did not state that, Jean. I guess I want to be very clear. Moving forward in 2022, and I want to say this explicitly, as the chairperson, I am the chair of the Board of Trustees at this time. That could change,
And I'm the library director.
and I appreciate
Very
that.
much.
But I just want to be very clear that we're not going to go down sideways roads and we're not going to go on wild goose chases. We're going to stick to our role as the Board of Trustees and we're going to press forward. So I agree with Jen's earlier comments about not going into a contentious place, but allowing those comments about the word accusation. I'm just not going to support that at this time. So, do we have any other comments about that?
Mary, we have asked for measurable outcomes from this library for
Yeah.
at least 3 years. Measurable outcomes.
Yeah,
And every time we're told, if anybody has anything, they should talk directly with
right,
the director.
right,
So, I
right.
mean, it's not untruthful. It's
No, right.
our experience has been over these years. We've not had one attempt at a measurable outcome. It's
Right.
all the willingness to take people's comments afterwards, after a meeting, after a program, after anything. There's nothing measurable, and it's time, but that is a decision. Let's be honest. That's never going to happen unless the town manager tells the library director to do it. It's never going to happen.
Right, right.
So,
If I could just
But underscore it, but I'm sorry, Jean, I'm gonna press forward right now. In the spirit of moving forward,
That's
I'm
measured.
sorry, I'm not recognizing you right now. I wanna be very clear, moving forward,
You
we're
can't,
going to talk about constructive things. The
Yes.
expectation is that we have transparency. And I want to be very clear that because I've met with the town manager about this on a number of occasions, the contentiousness that's directed at the board is no longer going to be supported. And if there is further contention that feels combative at times, I'm going to stop the meetings because that's not the intention of the board. The intention of the board is to bring in information and advice to the library director and her staff. And what you do with it, of course, is up to you, but that's our position, not to be contentious. So I'm moving forward. Jean, I'm sorry. We're not going to go back and forth. We're not going to go back and forth. So if we've finished that discussion, our next meeting will be virtual but again, I'm going to pursue the questions on the board about a town space that we could utilize. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 at 6:30. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I make a motion.
Excellent. Matt, Suzette?
Yeah.
Do you support that as well? Jennifer?
Yes.
Good. And how about John? Do you support the adjournment of the meeting?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you all, and I look forward to reaching out with any specifics that I gain this week, and I'll look forward to seeing you all virtually on March 2nd. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Mary.
Good night. Good night. Thank you, everyone.